Hi, this is David Swanson with warisacrime.org with 4 things you should take immediately to your misrepresentatives in Washington. Number 1, the filibuster. Let's get clear on this. A long speech in a 70-year-old movie by a war propagandist, or a rant by a South Carolinian segregationist, or a progressive speech all day and night by a Vermont socialist is not a filibuster. It is a long speech. A filibuster is a technique by which a minority of senators blocks the legislation of a majority of senators and a majority of House members. A filibuster allows senators representing as little as 11% of Americans to block legislation. It does not protect minority rights. It provides minority rule. There is no excuse for it. Regardless of party, your average senator is so far worse than your average House member that we do not need something that empowers a minority of them to block everything. It should have been done away with 2 years ago, but then the Democrats would have no excuse for their performance of the past 2 years. Better late than never. End it. Don't mend it. Number 2, the signing statement. When George W. Bush began signing bills into law and adding statements stipulating which parts of the new law he would violate and proceeding to thereby violate them, it offended everybody to the left of Karl Rove. It was an outrage. We wouldn't stand for it. And now President Obama does the same thing, and progressives encourage him. Or if you prefer, so-called progressives encourage him. People are encouraging the president to use a signing statement to undo a measure that would prevent giving Guantanamo prisoners actual trials in courts of law. Not that he's necessarily going to give those to them, certainly not all of them, but according to a White House spokesperson, without this unconstitutional move, it's hard to pretend you're closing Guantanamo. His words. If this were George W. Bush, what would we be saying he should do? If he opposed a bill, he should veto it. And that is what this president should do. And if he thereby delays the funding for some illegal wars, hey, it's a price we'll have to pay. Number 3, tax the rich. 60% of Americans in a 60 Minutes CBS poll picked taxing the rich as their first choice for how to address the deficit. If we're going to have democratic representation, we have to listen to 60% of Americans. Number 4, cut military spending. Another 20% of Americans in the same poll chose cutting military spending as their first choice for how to address the deficit. This week we heard first that Robert Gates would propose to cut $100 billion out of military spending. Then we heard that what he actually meant was that he would propose yet again to increase military spending and then to retire, but to recommend to future officials in our government that they cut $100 billion out, but over a period of 5 years, during some future 5 years, and not actually $100 billion, but 70-some billion. This is outrageous. If Congress maintains the power to legislate, which will require throwing out the filibuster and the signing statement, among other reforms, and if we are able to compel the Congress to represent us, which we might be, as we are unable to compel presidents to represent us, then we don't have to wait for Robert Gates or some other Secretary of War. We can end the insanity now. Should we tax the rich or cut military spending? I say let's do both, immediately.
I can't remember if I cried when we first had to sleep outside, but something touched me deep inside the day